That's all right. Hey, Conor, don't throw those. Conor.
Smashing a dolly through the window, injuring UFC fighters, demanding Khabib get off the fucking bus. Khabib doesn't get off the
sport,
bus.
and as long as he is fighting, he is the undisputed king of the UFC.
Once hailed as the king of the Octagon, the brash-talking, hard-hitting Irishman took the world by storm. Conor McGregor, a name synonymous with success, swagger, and controversy. But behind the multi-million-dollar paydays and the knockout punches lies a darker tale. From world champion to courtroom convict, this is the story of a man who fought his way to the top, only to become his own greatest enemy. Brace yourself for a journey into the rise, reign, and shocking fall of Conor McGregor. Chapter 1. Dublin Beginnings. To understand McGregor's meteoric rise, we first need to step back into the streets of Crumlin, Dublin. Born on July 14, 1988, Conor Anthony McGregor grew up in a working-class neighborhood. Life wasn't glamorous. Dublin, in the late 80s and 90s, was a city still finding its feet post-economic struggles, and opportunities were slim. For McGregor, it was clear early on that he wasn't destined to take the conventional path. As a young boy, Conor was hyperactive, energetic, and to the frustration of many, quick to pick fights. He discovered his love for sports through football, playing for Lord's Celtic. But football wasn't enough to channel his relentless energy. By the time he hit his teens, he had started boxing at Crumlin Boxing Club. His passion for combat sports began to blossom, though back then even he couldn't have guessed where it would lead. Chapter 2. Plumbing dreams and fighting realities. Conor's adolescence wasn't exactly smooth sailing. After leaving school, he began training as a plumber, a trade that, for many in Dublin, was considered stable and respectable. But McGregor didn't see stability as a dream. As he worked long hours fitting pipes and fixing leaks, his mind wandered. He was restless, discontented, and itching to fight. The story goes that one day, he dropped his tools mid-shift and never looked back. This was a pivotal decision. With no financial security and little backing, Conor threw himself fully into the world of mixed martial arts, MMA. Under the tutelage of coach John Kavanagh at Straight Blast Gym in Dublin, he began honing his craft, but it wasn't an easy road. Living off welfare checks, Conor struggled to make ends meet. There's a well-documented story of him cashing a €180 unemployment check to buy food while telling anyone who would listen, "I'm going to be a world champion." Chapter 3. Early MMA career. McGregor's amateur MMA debut came in 2007, and he won by TKO in the first round. That victory lit a fire under him, and soon he transitioned to professional fights. Conor's early fights weren't under the bright lights of the UFC, but rather in small venues in Ireland and the UK. Yet even then, his flair was evident. He fought with an aggressive, unorthodox style, blending striking with precision and bravado. He was loud, cocky, and backed it all up. By 2012, McGregor had captured both the Cage Warriors featherweight and lightweight titles. This made him the first fighter in Cage Warriors history to hold belts in two weight divisions simultaneously. His achievements caught the eye of Dana White, president of the UFC, who famously flew to Dublin to meet the brash, young Irishman. Within months, McGregor was signed to the UFC. The stage was set. Chapter 4. The UFC era. McGregor's UFC debut in 2013 against Marcus Brimage was nothing short of spectacular. He won via TKO in just over a minute, earning a knockout of the night bonus. His personality shone in post-fight interviews where he declared he was here to take over, not just participate. Fans loved him. Critics were intrigued. The UFC had found its next superstar. Conor's rise in the UFC was meteoric. His charisma outside the Octagon was matched only by his ferocity inside it. By 2015, he had secured the interim featherweight championship, and later that year, he shocked the world by knocking out the seemingly invincible Jose Aldo in just 13 seconds to become the undisputed featherweight champion. That knockout became one of the most replayed moments in MMA history. It wasn't just a win, it was a statement. Conor McGregor was officially a global sensation. Chapter 5. The Double Champ. In 2016, McGregor set his sights on a new challenge, the lightweight division. He faced Eddie Alvarez for the lightweight title, aiming to become the first fighter in UFC history to hold two belts simultaneously. The fight was vintage McGregor. With clinical precision, he dismantled Alvarez, winning by knockout in the second round. Afterward, he famously demanded a second belt and declared, "I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody." Conor McGregor wasn't just a fighter. He was a cultural phenomenon. His trash talk was legendary, his walkouts were electric, and his confidence bordered on absurd. He embodied the spirit of a showman, drawing millions to watch his fights and making the UFC more mainstream than ever before. Chapter 6. Fame and Fortune. With his fame came unimaginable wealth. McGregor launched his whiskey brand, Proper No. 12, signed lucrative sponsorship deals, and even graced the cover of Forbes as one of the highest-paid athletes in the world. But with wealth and fame came distractions. The man who once trained obsessively in a Dublin gym now found himself flying private jets, attending red carpet events, and enjoying a lifestyle far removed from his humble beginnings. The cracks began to show. His training camps reportedly became less disciplined, and his focus on fighting waned. Fans started to wonder, was Conor still the hungry fighter he once was? Or had the glitz and glamour dulled his edge? Chapter 7. The Mayweather Circus. In 2017, McGregor made headlines not for an MMA fight but for stepping into the boxing ring against the undefeated Floyd Mayweather Jr. The fight was billed as the money fight, and it lived up to its name, generating over $600 million in revenue. Conor, with zero professional boxing experience, managed to last 10 rounds before being stopped by TKO. While McGregor's performance was commendable, the fight was criticized as a spectacle more than a legitimate competition. Still, Conor walked away with a reported $100 million payday. It was a game-changer for his bank account, but some argue it marked the beginning of his decline as a fighter. Chapter 8. Legal troubles begin. Post-Mayweather, McGregor's life began to spiral. In 2018, he was involved in one of the most infamous incidents in MMA history. After a press conference altercation between his teammate Artem Lobov and Khabib Nurmagomedov, Conor retaliated by attacking a bus carrying Khabib and other fighters, throwing a dolly through its window. The incident injured multiple fighters and led to Conor being arrested and charged. Though he avoided jail time, the bus attack tarnished his reputation. It was clear that McGregor's temper and impulsiveness were getting the better of him. Unfortunately, this was just the start. Chapter 9. Defeats and Decline. In October 2018, McGregor faced Khabib for the lightweight title in one of the most highly anticipated fights in UFC history. The bout was personal, with both fighters exchanging heated insults in the build-up. Inside the Octagon, Khabib dominated, submitting McGregor in the fourth round. The fight ended in chaos, with Khabib leaping into the crowd to attack McGregor's team, sparking an all-out brawl. The loss marked a turning point. While McGregor would return to the Octagon in 2020 and 2021, his performances were inconsistent. He defeated Donald "Cowboy" Cerrone in a quick TKO victory, but suffered back-to-back losses to Dustin Poirier, including a gruesome leg injury. Chapter 10. Legal troubles deepen. Outside the cage, McGregor's behavior continued to raise eyebrows. He faced multiple allegations of assault, including a bar fight in which he punched an elderly man for refusing a shot of his whiskey. Lawsuits and police investigations became a recurring theme in his life. Fans who once idolized him began to question whether the fame had destroyed the man they admired. Chapter 11. The Businessman Mask. Even as Conor McGregor's career in the Octagon faltered and his legal troubles piled up, his business ventures soared. Proper No. 12 whiskey, launched in 2018, became a massive success. Though critics lambasted the quality, sales figures told a different story. By 2021, McGregor reportedly sold his stake in the company for a whopping $600 million. Conor was no longer just a fighter. He was a brand. However, the businessman facade wasn't without cracks. Interviews often revealed a man who seemed torn between his love for fighting and his addiction to fame. McGregor would oscillate between promising a UFC comeback and flaunting his wealth on social media, showing off luxury cars, yachts, and designer suits. Fans began to wonder, was he truly serious about fighting anymore? Or was he simply cashing in on his name while it still carried weight? Behind the glitz, those closest to McGregor painted a different picture. Reports of erratic behavior and an increasingly isolated lifestyle surfaced. Former teammates and coaches quietly stepped away, some even speaking out about his lack of discipline. Coach John Kavanagh, once fiercely loyal, admitted in interviews that getting Conor into fight-ready shape was becoming increasingly difficult. Chapter 12. The Tragedy of Lost Identity. Conor McGregor's story isn't just about victories and losses. It's also about identity. At his peak, he wasn't just an athlete. He was a cultural icon. He represented the underdog spirit, the fiery will of a working-class Irishman who refused to be ignored. But as his fame grew, so did his distance from the roots that had fueled his rise. By 2020, it was clear that McGregor's identity had shifted. The fighter who once stayed up late watching old Muhammad Ali tapes, dreaming of greatness, now seemed consumed by material wealth and ego. Social media became his battleground, where he hurled insults, flaunted his wealth, and engaged in bizarre feuds. Even his interactions with fans turned sour, as accusations of arrogance and dismissiveness replaced the charm that once endeared him to millions. Critics questioned whether McGregor had fallen victim to his own hype. The man who once declared, "Doubt me now," seemed to be doubting himself. Chapter 13. The rivalry with Khabib. Unfinished business. The feud between McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov remains one of the ugliest in MMA history. What began as a fight for the lightweight championship devolved into a deeply personal, venomous rivalry. McGregor insulted Khabib's religion, family, and country in the lead-up to their fight, crossing lines many felt should never be crossed. After Khabib's dominant victory, he retired undefeated, leaving McGregor without a chance to avenge the loss. Yet, the rivalry lingered. McGregor continued to take shots at Khabib on social media, mocking his retirement and goading him for a rematch. Khabib, however, refused to engage. The bitterness seemed to weigh more heavily on McGregor than on his rival, further cementing the perception that the Irishman was struggling to move past his failures. Chapter 14. The Poirier Saga. The trilogy with Dustin Poirier was supposed to be McGregor's shot at redemption. In their first encounter in 2014, McGregor knocked Poirier out in the first round, showcasing his striking prowess. But by the time they met again in 2021, the tides had turned. In their second fight, Poirier capitalized on McGregor's reliance on boxing, using devastating leg kicks to neutralize his movement before finishing him with strikes. The loss was a shock, but McGregor quickly demanded a third fight, promising a return to his old form. Instead, their third bout ended in disaster for McGregor. After a competitive first round, he suffered a freak leg break, leaving him unable to continue. The image of Conor sitting against the cage, screaming obscenities and insisting the fight wasn't over, became emblematic of his recent struggles. The aftermath of the Poirier trilogy was messy. McGregor's trash talk turned dark, targeting Poirier's family and crossing boundaries even his most die-hard fans found hard to defend. The question loomed larger than ever. Was Conor McGregor truly capable of a comeback? Or had the sport evolved beyond him? Chapter 15. Battles in the courtroom. By this point, McGregor's legal troubles had become a significant part of his story. The bus attack may have been the most infamous incident, but it was far from the only one. Allegations of sexual assault emerged, with multiple women accusing McGregor of inappropriate behavior. Though his legal team denied the claims and no criminal charges were filed in many cases, the damage to his reputation was undeniable. Until recently, where he was found guilty in his civil case in Ireland and had to pay over $250,000 in damages to his victim, which now seems to be the nail in the coffin in his career. Then there was the infamous bar assault in 2019 when McGregor punched an elderly man for refusing a shot of proper number 12. The CCTV footage went viral, sparking outrage. McGregor later apologized, but the incident underscored a disturbing pattern. A man who seemed unable to control his impulses, lashing out when things didn't go his way. These incidents, combined with lawsuits and public altercations, painted a picture of a man spiraling out of control. Fans and commentators alike wondered whether McGregor's unchecked ego and temper would eventually lead to a more serious downfall. Chapter 16. The Comeback Question. Despite all the chaos, McGregor has never stopped talking about a comeback. Whether through social media posts of his training sessions or interviews promising a return to form, he insists his story isn't over. The UFC, for its part, has kept the door open. Love him or hate him, McGregor remains a massive draw. Even in decline, he's a pay-per-view king, and his presence boosts the UFC's visibility like no other fighter can. But the question remains, does McGregor still have what it takes? The sport of MMA is evolving rapidly, with younger, hungrier fighters rising through the ranks. McGregor's time away from the Octagon, combined with his injuries and age, raises serious doubts about his ability to compete at the highest level. Chapter 17. A Tale of Two Conors. At its heart, the story of Conor McGregor is one of duality. He's a man who has inspired millions with his story of grit and determination, yet he's also a man whose actions have alienated many. For every moment of brilliance, knocking out Aldo, becoming a double champion, there's an equal moment of infamy: the bus attack, the bar fight, the endless stream of controversies. Conor McGregor's story is far from over, but it stands as a cautionary tale. It's a reminder of the pitfalls of unchecked ambition and the dangers of letting success go to one's head. McGregor once said, "We're not here to take part, We're here to take over. For a time he did. But the question now is whether he can rediscover the fire that made him a champion, or whether he'll be remembered as a star who burned too brightly, too quickly. Conclusion: the legacy of McGregor. Conor McGregor's legacy is as complex as the man himself. He's a trailblazer, a disruptor, and arguably the most influential fighter in MMA history. Yet his story is also a tragedy, marked by self-inflicted wounds and missed opportunities. Whether McGregor can rise again or fades into infamy remains to be seen. One thing, however, is certain. His journey has captivated the world like no other. From champ to criminal, from hero to villain, Conor McGregor's story will be told for generations to come. An unfiltered tale of greatness, flaws, and the human spirit in all its raw complexity.